Hello and welcome to the Tea Party Howdy channel for a review of What Killed Michael Brown, the 2020 release by Shelby Steele. Okay, well, precursor. I watched this last night right after watching No Safe Spaces with Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla. So I think that's going to influence this video, so I just want you to know that. The video documentary covers mostly Shelby Steele's biography, which is a very interesting one, actually. And it does deal with Michael Brown, as you would expect. But it only covers the Michael Brown situation for about half of the movie, and then at the very end it comes back to Michael Brown. But there's a very large chunk that has nothing to do with him. Because the movie is basically unleashing in documentary form Shelby Steele's philosophy of conservatism versus liberalism. And if you are not a fan of Shelby Steele or not familiar with him, he started as a lefty and then moved right and then moved really far right, and he's been there for quite a long time, and he is one of the superior academic African American black writers that exist. And there's way more than you would ever know if you only watch the mainstream media, because the rule is if you are black and you are conservative, you are invisible. You don't exist. You don't even get to get canceled because you are just flat out invisible. Never heard of you, never seen you, never gonna see you. That's the philosophy for the mainstream media in regards to black conservatives. But for those who swim in other pools and are not afraid to read other materials and watch other materials, like, for example, What Killed Michael Brown, then you have a better understanding of, like, there's a lot of really smart black people out there that are conservatives and they're not invisible, and they have some really important things to say. And that's what this documentary is. It's a lot of the important things that he has to say, Shelby Steele, on the condition of liberalism versus conservatism and how it plays out in actual reality as compared to on paper. That also is my biggest disappointment in the movie. The movie was banned by Amazon because welcome to safe spaces for everywhere, again, tying it into the Adam Carolla movie, that big tech is just censoring as fast and as far as they can and doing very well, because who's going to stop them? But it got unbanned and then became, like, I think the #1 watched video for a while. Yay. Clap, clap, clap. However, here's the thing. This documentary plays strictly, so says me, strictly to a conservative audience. There's nothing in it that you, as a conservative, that I'm aware of, you can put it in the comments and I will gladly take it into consideration, that you can say, hey, to your lefty friends, go, you should check this out. If you have any lefty friends, because let's face it, lefties don't allow themselves to have friends on the right. What is up with them guys? They are so intolerant. Anyway, where the Adam Carolla had all the comedians that you could use to sell it, to watch the No Safe Spaces, this one doesn't. This one is he does interview Al Sharpton several times, actually. And he interviews a few other far lefties, but mostly this video documentary is just hardcore preaching to the choir. And you know, y'all make choices when you make a documentary of who is your target audience and what you want to do with it. I don't know if he wanted the target audience of exclusively conservatives or if he did want it to reach out to those who are not, but if he did, whoever helped him produce it doesn't know how to do it. And I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope tons of lefties watch this and go, because the one constant in conservatism versus liberalism in America is the more you know from the wider ranges of sources, the less you remain a lefty. The thing you hear nonstop from people who walk away from the left is, I started reading more material. I studied the ideas deeper, and I was like, wow, I'm being lied to on a regular basis. So I decided to walk away. When you watch people who go from the right to the left, which is always a smaller number, the constant is, I miss having any kind of say-so and power, and if I run to your side, you'll coddle me because I'm a never-Trumper and you hate Trump, so as long as Trump's around, you'll say I'm wonderful, just like they did to McCain when McCain was supporting the lefties. They're like, oh, come here. And then when McCain ran for president, they're like, ew, gross, get away. And they turned their back on him in a heartbeat. Because the right in America is all about freedom for the individual. And the left in America is all about power. Give me more power. Nancy Pelosi is 80 years old, and she's in the House of Representatives, a body of legislatures that only serves 2 years. She has ran 50, 60 times. 60 would make her 120. But she's, it's crazy. When you look at the average age of Republicans in the House compared to the average age of Democrats, you see the philosophy just right there in real terms. Conservatives and Republicans in the House are young, and they only serve 2 to 4, maybe 5 terms. That's a lot. And you look at the left side with the Democrats, it's like the Congressional Black Caucus has been in there since the 1960s. They never, ever, ever leave. The Republicans either go back home into private industry where they came from, or they try and bump up to the Senate. I don't think any of them been crazy enough to try and run for president from the House. That would be, nobody's ever done it. And nobody ever did Trump either. And, it's funny when it comes to like Amy Coney Barrett, you hear all the time, it's unprecedented to do this. It's unprecedented to do it this close to the election. For 8 years, all we heard about Obama was, it's unprecedented, and it's marvelous. Yay! And now all of a sudden, unprecedented is bad. But I thought unprecedented meant progressive. Shut up! Don't bring that up. You know that only means going to the left. Oh, sorry. My mistake. So this documentary about what killed Michael Brown. I would say the best part of the documentary is the second half, which has nothing to do with Michael Brown. He interviews a few pastors, but one in particular, who is in the south side of Chicago. And that man deserves his own documentary all about him. The only problem is if you do that, then it power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and it would probably go to his head, which is, it's a human condition. It's tough stuff. It's really hard to shoot to the top and maintain stability in your brain, especially if you do it really fast. Luckily, the critical drinker, who most of my views come from that video, when he shot to stardom on YouTube, he only shot to stardom on YouTube. He was already I don't want to say well-known, but he was doing very, very well with his writing. He said already had 8 books released by the time that came out. So his leap to the top was done in a manner that allowed him to keep his head, and quite well. And because he's a writer, he had the structure of how to do his channel and do it very, very well, and still is, actually. And there's a preacher in What Killed Michael Brown that, boy, if he ever does get really famous because of this video or other videos about him, and I don't mean mine, I mean the documentary What Killed Michael Brown, hopefully he'll handle it as well, because holy moly is he doing some really, really good stuff with those folks. And it was interesting, too, because I had this conversation a couple of days ago about the very notion, because, I watched the Gary Lamb videos, and I watched the Hood conservative videos that he's affiliated with, a few of them. And there's a bunch of other black YouTubers I watch. And the one thing I keep hearing from them over and over and over, which is addressed heavily at the very end of the What Killed Michael Brown, is the notion that the black man's burden is that they have to be black people. They're not allowed to be people. Everybody else in America is allowed to be a people. They don't have to do the hyphen. But black people They're constantly hit with, well, speaking as a black person, well, what does it feel like to be a black person? Every time, not every time, most of the time, when people talk to blacks, they're always asking them, the black people, from the point of view of, well, explain the black experience. Nobody else has to put up with that. Nobody goes to American Indians and go, so let's just do this conversation 90% tilted towards what's it like to be an American Indian. No, they're just like, they might be interested and might be fascinated. But it's like, okay, cool. Now, so what are we having for lunch? You know? And it's the same thing with Chinese people. It's the same thing with Japanese people. It's the same thing with India people. It's the same thing with everybody but black people. Black people's burden is huge. Their peers will come out after them hardcore if they act like people. Because in their culture, people is white, and you can't act white. Well, what is it to act white? Oh, be on time, be married, raise your children instead of other people's children, and all of these things that were in that African American museum in Washington, D.C. that had to be pulled down. It's like my black pastor, he said that he's always dealing with his kids being told that they act white. And I didn't think of what he said at the time from the point of view of, acting white. I did the reverse. I said, really? So what does it mean to act black? What is the expectation from black people towards black people to act black? And when you start filling in those blanks to answer that question, you come to the conclusion really fast, whoa, they have a very, very low self-esteem. They have low standards set for themselves of what you're allowed to do to remain acting black. Because if you diverge from any of those things, then you're acting white. Whatever white means, because that's totally an American concept, as is pointed out by Akkad all the time, that in Europe, there's no such thing as white. There's Irish, there's Scottish, there's Polish, there is no white identity. Because if you think the Irish are the same as the Scottish, good luck with that. That's like saying somebody from Canada is the same as American. People like to joke about it, but it's just a joke. They're very, very different. So this video documentary addresses that heavily at the end, that it sums up with the idea, and I'm going to use my language instead of his. Watch their video to get their language, and yes, do that. Black people need to become people instead of black people. And when black people become people, like everybody else has become a people, the Irish became people, the Italians became people, the Japanese and Chinese have become people. Once they become people, then they're free. But as long as they're treated as victims and living off of the government largesse, I don't want to say the word that utter, I'll say utter, living off of the utter of the government, they're not people. They're black people. They're African American people. They're, pick your term. There's 6 to 9 different terms that you can apply to them over the last 120 years. Some would argue that's the definition of an identity crisis. When you're changing the name of your group every 10 to 15 years, and they have, well, then how is that not an identity crisis? But again, this is only applicable to those who aren't people. This is only applying to people that are black people, African American people, colored people, people of color. You keep rolling the dice. We've run out of mixing. Oh, so now it'll be black Africans instead of African blacks. Or it's like, who knows what the left is going to come up with next to crush any of their opposition. Once they become people, then they'll be free. The burden will be lifted. And once they're people, then they will be held accountable for their own actions like everybody else is. And many, many, many will succeed. And just like the rest of people, many won't. Life is hard. Watch that scene from Rocky 6, where Rocky's talking to his son, and he just talks about how brutal life is. And rumor has it, Rocky's Italian, but in the movie, he's not. He's a people. He's a father talking to a son about how hard life is. It's this thing we keep hearing about, the talk that minorities, they even brought it up in the presidential debate, the talk that black people have with their kids. Do you really think that's exclusive to black people? If you do, then you need to step out of your bubble and ask other people, hey, you guys, you people, you people, you Chinese people, you whatever, do you have the talk where you tell your kid to be respectful to cops, to keep your hands up there? Surprise, surprise! Teaching your kids how to behave around people of authority, particularly when they have guns. Most parents do it regardless of the pigmentation of their skin. And the black people that don't know that just shows the bubble they're in. So hopefully they'll become people. Hopefully they'll become people quick. Just don't expect it if Biden wins. Because if Biden wins, no, they will not be allowed to be people. They were not allowed to be people under Johnson. They were not allowed to be people under Nixon. Nixon created affirmative action. That affirmative action, that is the pretty way of saying racist hiring. Okay, this video's gone on way long enough. There's no way you're a lefty in listening to this, but if you are, wow, are you sure you're still a lefty? Welcome to our side. Welcome to freedom instead of power. Do check this out. You can try and get your lefty friends to watch it if you want. I don't know what you would use to sell them on it, but I mean, it's good information. But when you're being poisoned by academia and the media, good information to them sounds like lies and propaganda, because nobody seems to be aware that propaganda means a one-sided argument. And the right, at least in the modern world, doesn't do propaganda. They do point out the other side of the issue. I just did it a lot in this video, but good luck having them see it. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the future.